The title of this project is Poshak Puralekh. We're at the Centre of Indian Classical Dance. The date is 30th of January and the time is 4:15. The interviewer is Mita Pujara and I'm with Nilima Devi. So, Didi, if you could maybe start us off just by letting me know your full name and your relationship to CICD.
My full name is Nilima Devi MBE and I'm the founder and Artistic Director of Centre for Indian Classical Dance, which started on 1st January 1981.
So where were you born? What's your background?
I was born in India, Baroda. I come from Maharashtrian family. Of course, Gujarati is also my second culture because I grew up in Gujarat and I started training in India about my art form because I used to dance all the time, dance and sing. So my father thought I must put her into dance class to use her energy in a better way. So that is how my dance journey began at the age of 6-7.
And this project is about the costumes in the archive of CICD. Tell me a little bit about what your involvement is with the costumes.
Yeah, because, when you run an organization, you do performances because it's a performing arts and when you perform on the stage, you need different costumes. And as we, as the training began in 81 and then as we progressed, because this is now 40 years of archive of this costume, it's a historical archive. So when we grew on a larger scale, we did large productions and for that we had to create new costumes. It's not only traditional classical costumes, but as per the production, we had to also, costume is also very important to impact audiences as well as to look, dramatize, on the stage from so many different points of view. That is how different costumes were created as per different productions.
And your involvement specifically, the interesting thing is, have you worked with costume designers on this project at all?
Some projects definitely with costume designer, such as, for example, The Ugly Duckling. We commissioned Loughborough College of Art and their students were involved because they would do the designing of the costumes and all that. So they design it on the piece of paper. Then I also worked with Arts in Education, who also gave us some help because Ugly Duckling is an enormous classic story, it's a story. So we turned into Indian dance drama, and it was done it in 1989 we performed. So when we wanted to do this, for example, when the Ugly Duckling turns into a beautiful swan, so we created that costume which completely transformed the whole Kathak costume into beautiful swan costume. A lot of layers of the veil, and then when the dancers were performing and dancing, it looks really, and they had big wings as well. So it really looked like the swan dancing, and they had big heads as well, so like with a feather on. Yes, and also for Ugly Duckling also we created a costume which made her ugly, because she was not duck, she was the ugly duckling and she looked so different,
So that's brilliant, thank you, really interesting. So you've talked a little bit about the process that you used in Ugly Duckling to work with a designer. Can you talk me through a little bit of the process from design to production of a costume, the kind of different stages you have to go to from having the initial idea, I suppose, of what you want to having the moment of when you put it on the dancer?
Yeah. Because I think in Ugly Duckling there are different characters. So for example, for Mother Duck, we had to show that how the hatching of the eggs. How do we show that? So we had to have a big skirt under which we put all our small Kathak students who were going to roll out, So nobody can see. The music was surged, the rolling of the hatching of the eggs would start, and one by one these little ducklings, they came out, And that is how, so we had to use a special skirt. And we were lucky enough to work with Arts in Education, because I was there as an advisory teacher for Indian dance, so I could use their costume archive as well. So they had a big costume because they use it for their ballet productions. So it was really wonderful to take that skirt and use it for the Mother Duck, For the old lady in The Ugly Duckling, of course, we thought, what should we do? we sure sari will be good because this is an Indian dance. Why not we use a sari rather than using some Western type costume, you know? So we had my student who was, at that time she was 60 years of her age, you know, and we took her as an old lady. She's an English lady, and she did a fantastic role as an old lady. And then we had all these different characters like the dogs and the hen and the cat. Farmyard animals we had to create. So we had to create the feather for the peacocks. The special costume we made it for the pigs, and for the goats and the sheeps. And so as per the farmyard animals, of course, these costumes were designed by Loughborough College of Art. And although they design ugly duckling costume as well as the swan costume, my some senior students, you know, they had some creative ideas. So they put this feather, the kind of the wings, by using chiffon material, white chiffon material. So it really looked very nice. So they always used to sit here, they used to stitch here. So we had the whole space was full of ugly duckling costumes, you know, prepared. And some of the people, I think we gave them, for example, arts in education, they had their person who can stitch the costumes. So we gave them, yes. So they used to have in-house person who can come. They used to have a lot of parents who could give voluntary services. So they used to come and do the job.
So you're talking of, so a lot of these things were stitched here, which is unusual, I thought.
Ugly duckling production costumes were definitely here, but other productions sometimes we did it in India.
Yeah, tell me a little about those costumes, which were perhaps stitched in India.
I think especially when we did the 9 planets called Vyom, it's our planet systems, you know, of the sky. So for 9 planets we designed costumes in India, and it was a traditional like dhoti style costume with the top and the dupattas. And for different planetary system we use different colors. So although it was a white costume, the particular groups who used to represent different planet, they would have, according to the planet's color, we chose those kind of colors for dupattas. So that it represented. So for example, if it was a Pluto, then we had that sort of color. And then if we had a sun, so we had kind of orange color, you know. And if it moon, then we had like a light bluish color with sparkles and all that. So for different planets, we chose a different color dupattas, you know.
So lots of different.
And then we it was not only CICD dancers perform or students perform. It was a sort of dance groups around Leicester's were involved in performing this whole ballet production. So we had nearly 60 people performed. And for Ugly Duckling also we had 60 to 80 students perform and dancers, you know, because Farmyard Animal took something like 20-30.
I mean, it's extraordinary, especially listening to it today in 2020, where we just don't have the arts and education in Leicester.
It's no more there now.
Yeah, no. And those sorts of resources and time and the amount of people doing classical dance. So obviously there was a lot of different productions, and there's you sound like you've had a massive role in designing the costumes.
Yeah.
But can you perhaps tell me, over the last 40 years, what have you noticed about tastes and aesthetics sort of changing?
Yeah. Because
what would you? Is there anything you'd like to say?
I think what is happening that Indian classical dance, especially South Asian dance, although we are doing training in classical dance, in training students in the traditional art form, when they move into the professional world and to survive, they have to do mainstream dance like contemporary. And somebody like me and other senior dancers, we are not contemporary trained, but when we have to perform any kind of a production, or when we try to create any new work, we always look at it how we can present it in a contemporary context. So in that we present in a different way. Unlike classical dance, we do the presentation in a very different way. We use the theater, in the theater context, how you can communicate with the audience, as well as we also look at it how we can change our costumes, you know. So it is not more sparkling, but it is more subtle colors, which has got a contemporary image. So people focus more on dance, what the dancer is trying to portray, That is very, very important. And so that is how we look at it. When also I choreographed a piece on Beethoven, we also did the same thing, because it was Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 1. I think I chose the music that. And with 3 dancers we performed. So 2 of my wonderful dancers, students who performed with me. So we chose the color, which was a very contemporary color, and which, when we were dancing, it was a very flowing material, so it looked beautiful, So we did Kathak on Beethoven's Piano Concerto. But always now, when we produce new work, we try to see how we can contemporize it in so many different ways.
Yeah.
The costume is one of the important aspects in that. And as well as when we did folk dances, of course, folk dances goes back to India. So you can buy beautiful folk dance costumes in India. So I always, whenever I went, I brought, because we thought for community, folk dances were very, very popular, It's like Bhangra, Gujarati Garba, Ras. So we got also very colorful costumes for Bhangra, Ras Garba and all that. So that one was always done in India, of course, yeah.
And you mentioned things like the Irish collaboration that you did with costumes, which, and some of those costumes are in the archive as well.
Yes.
Would you like to say anything about how those were put together, the collaboration? How did you do that, marry the Indian and the Irish?
Yeah, Indian and Irish, we married at 2 levels. One level was technical level, that what is their dance technique they perform, what Kathak technique, and we combine those rhythmic improvisation together. Although, because we use traditional Kathak costumes for that, although I didn't use completely traditional, but it was kind of a contemporary with some traditional outlook, And because the Irish dancer, he performed in his Irish dress. So I tried to make it show that it's also light as well, because it was quite technically demanding production,
I can imagine.
And as well as also we tried to combine how we can look into expressive form. So we use poetry. So we did Indian poetry, and we did also Irish poetry. And because we had also Indian musicians and Irish musicians. So that helped us to gel. So we both dance on that poetry. So Irish dancer, of course, mainly they do a lot of footwork, and it's a very standing position. But it was a challenge for him to dance to a poetry.
Yeah. And so the costumes there was something that tied them together, but you went for a slightly less.
We had sort of color combination. So if he had a green, so I tried to wear something which matches with his color. Or maybe if because it was generally white, and because they wear socks as well and everything, and shoes. So try to match that way, yeah.
That's great to know, and it's interesting to listen to how it's had to adapt to the times,
Yes.
And things have changed from puffy sleeves to not having sleeves, and dancers' involvement in creating those new costumes are really, really interesting. And can I ask you a little bit about, I suppose, the ritual of putting on a costume itself now, and how you think, and you can tell me from your experience, personally, what happens to you as a dancer and a performer when you put on a costume. Does it transform in any way? And if it does shift you, how does a costume transform a dancer from a studio to a dancer who's performing?
I think when you're performing on the stage, for example, if you're doing a particular character, it definitely transforms you with the type of costume you wear, because you have to present it for the audience. So sort of it is a very you have to be very dramatized, So it transforms everything, because you become that character, mainly thing. So it's very empowering. And when you transform into that character, you're communicating with the audience. So of course your dance is important, your expressions are important, but along with that, costume also makes a difference, So it impacts on the presentation, because it is a performing arts. It is a visual art where it's a communication between dancer and the audience. So that is very, very important. So.
And do you remember the first time you put on a costume as a little girl, and how it made you feel?
I think I felt something special, because normally you don't wear that kind of costume. So it's something new. It is something you want to look. It just makes you more proud feeling that, I'm dancing in this beautiful costume, And then every time, whenever I would perform, I would ask my mother, how did I look, even people. And it's like that. So it really gives you excitement and proud feeling, and a joy of dancing in a beautiful costume where you enjoy. So these are the lovely feelings.
Which brings me to my last question, which is more about how you feel these costumes have added to the cultural life of Leicester, which is such a multicultural and diverse city. What do you feel the significance of having this costume archive is in the city of Leicester, and what you think it's leaving behind? What is its legacy? What is its significance?
I think this costume is going to be a very historical archive for Leicester City, because it is the heritage of Indian classical dance and culture, how it began and what productions it is attached to the different stories with the costume, because every costume has got a story. It was produced as per the different production. So it will help future researchers, scholars, academics, young people who would like to look back or find out their own roots. So this costume archive will be always a wonderful resource for them to study, as well as because we are not only giving the costume, we are also giving some history behind that. So what the production done, why the part of how it was stitched, how was the costume was made, where it was made, the material of the costumes, all these things will be there. So it is kind of a study for so many different people, like visual artists, people who are in the textile, people who are working on some Indian saris and material. So it will be interest for a lot of people, and also for our younger generations to come. Not our younger generation, all these multicultural people here who would be interested in Indian classical art and culture and costume. They can always find out from the New York Museum services, because we are not only giving here, but we are also giving to Victoria and Albert Museum as well in London. We are giving to Wolverhampton. So it's a beautiful collection of history, memory, heritage, and it's just an invaluable resource for Leicester City as well.
Thank you very much, Didi, for letting me interview you today. That concludes our interview for Poshak Puralekh. And
thank you.
Thank you very much.